Hey guys, it's Michael. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to a new video of the programming series. And in this video, I want to show you my favorite chin-up assistance exercises. So let's go. If you want to learn how to design advanced strength training programs, if you want to know how to select exercises, how to find the right rep range, how to find the right amount of sets, how to work with RPEs, how to train auto-regulated, what should you use? Top and back off sets, straight sets, ascending sets, cluster sets, EMOMs. There are so many options. It's so confusing if you don't know the benefits and maybe also disadvantages of using one or the other. And then the next question is, if you have your training set up, how do you progress it over time? How do you create a block and then a macro cycle? How do you progress on the long run? There's so many questions in the programming field that are hard to answer if you don't have them in a chronological order and that someone actually shows you how to build it up progressively. And that is what I did in my strength programming course. We will actually start programming together. It will be theory followed by actually programming alongside me. So you will get a programming sheet, you will start with the goal selection, rep range selection, exercise selection, set selection, frequency, and it will all be guided by me. It's 99 videos, very comprehensive course, and the best thing is it starts already at 150 bucks. So don't miss out on further gains and check the strength programming course now. So let's start with the most obvious and of course the best category of chin-up assistance exercises, which are curls. Why are curls great as chin-up assistance? The chin-up itself is very, very good for arm development. No discussion on that. There's one little exception, and that will be the biceps brachii. And that is because it's a biarticular joint. So it does not only cross the elbow, but also the shoulder. And that means that to a certain extent, we can get more stimulus if we also work the biceps in a static shoulder position. Doing chin-ups, when it's shortened here in the elbow, it's lengthened in the shoulder. So it's not optimal stimulus, and the biceps brachii is probably able to receive more stimulus by assistance exercises. We know that from muscles that have similar position in the body, like the rectus femoris, and we know from the data that adding a leg extension next to a leg press movement pattern will lead to superior quad gains, because we then also have an exercise in where the hip angle is constant and does not change, so that the muscle is actually able to fully contract. Category 1 will be curls. And I would suggest you to use a curl variation with the elbows in front of the body. Why is that? Due to that position where the elbows are in front of the body, we will move the shoulder blades around the rib cage. We will open up the space in between the shoulder blades. We will move our arms in an externally rotated position, and we're working on our supination, which are all mobility requirements that will later on help us a ton in the chin-ups, that will make the movement more efficient and probably also help us to make the mobility better, to decrease the injury risk on the long run. So a nice variation could just be the good old cable curl. So don't retract the shoulders, rather think of someone has his hand in between your shoulder blades, and when you curl, you want to push that hand away by expanding that upper rib cage. And then you will feel that you already have much more supination and external rotation available. And then just go hard on the curls. And that, of course, works with all the other exercises for the biceps where the arms are in front of the body. Preacher curls, barbell curls, any other cable curl variation, easy bar curls, whatever makes you happy here. As long as you have that position and you go hard on it, it will improve your chin-up. The next category of assistance exercises that we can use to improve our chin-up are narrow grip rows. And narrow grip rows will provide us with something that the chin-up does not offer us, and that will be the lat working perfectly over the full range of motion. In order for an exercise to really work a certain muscle, that muscle needs to have a good leverage, because otherwise the body is not using it. That's just how a human functions in order to be a very, very efficient being. So the body is not using muscles which have worse leverage compared to others, because that would lead to more energy expenditure than necessary, and that just does not make sense for our nervous system. And if we're looking at the chin up, the first 60 degrees roughly of the range of motion, our lats have poor leverage, so other muscles need to take over. Elbow flexors, teres major, those are the muscles that will be active in those first 60 degrees. So we can argue that, especially in that range of motion, the lat is not as active as it could be. And the second argument why we could add a rowing motion, and that will help us, is that especially street lifters usually just have chin clearance in their repetitions. So another very stimulating part of the range of motion, that full closing where we bring the elbow on our body height, is missing as well. And the close grip row will offer us both. So that is a very, very great assistance exercise that I can only recommend you to do. When we're talking about narrow grips, I would suggest something around shoulder width. Too narrow is not nice because it will limit the range of motion as the handle is blocking the end range. So I don't have any machines here, so I use a cable setup like that. If you have a nice rowing machine, of course, that will be better, because the more stability we can add, the closer we can train to failure. So let that cable pull your arms long, shoulders in protraction, not round, but in protraction. Spine stays straight, and then we want to tuck the elbows in and roll full range of motion towards the belly button. And these will help you to blow up your lats, especially the upper portion of the lats, which is also working very, very good in chin-ups in order to give you more power there. Exercise category number 3 will be arm adduction movements. Chin-ups, if we are having a comparably narrow grip. So if you're super wide, that's not the case for you, but most of the chin-up athletes having a comparably narrow grip, roughly shoulder wide, we are training mostly in that plane of movement, so shoulder extension. And then we are missing out on a bit of back gains because we're not having a shoulder adduction movement in, which trains different portions of our back and our lats. So for full back development, which will of course also have a carryover to our chin up by just providing more hypertrophy to the whole back, is of course smaller than for more specific exercises. But if we are in an off season, so not close to the competition, we will definitely have time and capacities to put in exercises like that in order to maximize our gains and then have more performance in the next in-season. So wide grip chin-ups, wide grip lat pulls, any type of arm adduction movement can be a great assistance. So stuff like that. Now we learned that there's 3 categories of assistance exercises that we can use to improve our chin-up performance. But we don't really know yet how much of that assistance do we need in order to actually improve our chin-up performance. So how much chin-up versus how much assistance. And in order to answer that, the first thing we want to understand is how gains are related to volume. And it's actually an inverted U-shape relation. That means if this y-axis is gains and the x-axis is volume, we have an ascending limb here on that inverted U-shape, and this is the more is better limb. So if we're adding more sets, we are receiving more gains. Then we have this plateau region here. That is the sweet spot that we want to find over time in our programming. If we are in that sweet spot region and we're adding more and more volume, we are going to that descending limb here. Adding more sets will lead to less gains. Why is that? Because fatigue kicks in, and the more fatigue we add, at a certain point it will mask the further stimulus and just actually don't lead to more adaptation, to more gains, but just to more fatigue. So you're just more tired, but you're not receiving more gains. So our job is to find this sweet spot region here. So from the literature, we are getting some orientation values. It's very important to consider it just an orientation, because the total number of training capacity, so how much volume you can tolerate, depends on several factors like body weight, age, sex, training experience, genetic factors, your daily life, so how much stress already is kicking in from your job, if you're having kids, sleep, nutrition. So a lot of things you need to consider. So these are just average orientation numbers. And we know that we roughly are in that sweet spot area when we are hitting 12 to 20 sets for a muscle or a certain movement a week. We also know that within a session, there is also this inverted U-shape relation between gains and volume. That means if we're hitting all those 20 sets in one session, we are probably more here in that area. So on the diminishing returns side. So we're training a lot, but not receiving a lot of gains. And that led to this recommendation of having a frequency of 2 to 3 in order to recover better and then have more stimulating sets session by session. That means if we're assuming we're training twice a week, that certain movement muscle group, which is I think what most of you can easily do, we're having the sweet spot here, somewhat 6 to 10 sets a session, which are stimulating and giving us great returns on the gains. After diminishing returns, so adding more, probably not smart to do, just more fatigue, but not more gains on the long run. What's the takeaway here? That means we have 12 to 20 sets a week, 6 to 10 sets a session, again, plus minus, that we can distribute to chin-ups plus assistance, because that is roughly our total training capacity that we have. And we need to learn to decide if we now want to distribute a lot of those 6 or 10 sets to chin up itself, and how much of that we want to distribute to the assistance. And I'm not sure if you're interested in that, but maybe some side facts on why that is a bigger range. And a big reason for that, next to the other factors that I already told you, is how good are you at motor unit recruitment. And how good you are at that is reflecting in how advanced you are. So against the popular belief, more advanced athletes actually require less training volume. Why is that? Motor unit recruitment, in easy words, is how much muscle fibers are actually trained during an exercise, or how much muscle fibers are actually used and being active in an exercise. And that has two different factors. The one we already discussed is the level. The better you are at training, the more advanced you are at training, the more of your muscle fibers you can actually recruit. And the less advanced you are, the less of your muscle fibers you can actually recruit. And the second thing is a proximity to failure. So the closer we train to failure, the more muscles are being activated by our body, and the more muscles are actually trained. And with muscles, I don't mean muscle groups, but fibers of a particular muscle that is working. So, random example, we have intensity on the X scale, we have recruitment on the Y scale, and we're training a set to failure, and an advanced athlete, let's say we're training a biceps curl to failure, has used 90% of the biceps fibers. Very good, a lot of fibers are actually trained. Someone that is less advanced might train to failure and just activated 70% of the muscle fibers of his or her biceps. That will lead to much less fatigue because less muscles or less muscle fibers were being trained. That means a beginner can train more sets than an advanced athlete, because each set of an advanced athlete is already stimulating much more muscle fibers of that particular muscle. So if you are a beginner, upper range; if you are advanced, lower range. Let's break that down to a single session. We're taking a look at the 6 to 10 sets range. Again, it can be a bit less, but also a bit more for you. So just an example range, which has a high chance to be true for you, but it not necessarily is true for you. Now, we can distribute volume to our main lift, which will be the chin up. Let's say we're using 4 sets of those. In my case, let's say 6 sets for the main lift. And we know the chin up works the lats pretty good. It works the biceps or the elbow flexors pretty good, but not 100%. So we say of those 4 sets, it's also 4 sets for our lats, but it's only 2 sets for our biceps, because there's more capacity to it, because it was not fully contracted. That could lead to a decision of assistance exercises of 2 more sets for the lats in the form of maybe close grip rows. So we're training another 2 close grip rows set. And as we're just having 2 sets or 2 stimulating sets for the biceps, and we want to get to the 6 because that is what we consider our optimal range, we could add 4 sets of a biceps. And that could be a consideration that you can do for yourself. And how do you find out if this is a reasonable thing for you? By testing. Trial and error is the way to go. So you will start with 4 or 5 sets of the main lift itself, and you will train it. And you will see if you're making good gains. Then at a certain point, you're probably getting a limiting factor, or you see that you don't have the development in your back or in your elbow flexors that you want. What you then do is you start by adding assistance. And then you run a cycle with that assistance in. And you control the data, you track it, and you're running feedback loops. You see, is the performance improving? Do you receive the outcomes that you want? Yes? Good. Maybe a bit more is even better. Maybe you're getting close to that sweet spot region. Maybe you're already overpacing it. No one can tell you that. It's something you need to find out over time on your own. So it's very important to track your data and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just experiment with training. It's your training, so make sure it's optimally designed for you and not for others.